For more on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we are now joined by Dr. Sara Pienaar, former director at the South African Institute for International Affairs. Dr. Sara, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight here on News at Prime. The Prime Minister of Hungary saying that he's calling for an immediate ceasefire. He met with or at least spoke to the Russian President Volodymyr Putin and saying that his country will comply with Russian demands to pay for natural gas imports in rubles. What does that tell us about the direction that this particular war is taking? And firstly, are you confident of a ceasefire being possible at this point?
I think it's extremely difficult so far, where they've been talking about, talking peace at the same time they're hammering the life out of people. So at the moment I don't see it. I also think that if we're talking about Hungary, this is extreme dependence on Russian supplies, which dates back, of course, to the old Soviet days of oil and natural gas and other things too. Just implies that they can't do without it. It'll be very difficult for them. It's obviously one angle of this whole conundrum for the West is, how do they go on getting energy from Russia, and preferably not having to pay for it in rubles, and at the same time, try and make the Russians lose the war, which the Russians started. So that's one angle of it, certainly.
Now, we've seen also earlier in March the president of Ukraine saying Russia had seized at least a number of their nuclear posts or nuclear stations. It was 2 at the time, and they were going for a third one. I mean, with all that kind of dominance that Russia has established in the Ukraine, is this current pullback just merely a pullback to reconstitute a third attack?
In my view, it is. A lot of people now, military strategists in particular, are talking about this war being a war in phases, and we may have finished stage 1, but we've certainly got stage 2 ahead. And from what they are doing, and certainly from what experts are saying, it seems to be that they are withdrawing. Obviously the Ukrainians fought hard and bitterly, but the Russians are not running away defeated. They are withdrawing tactically in order to focus on perhaps a more manageable and much more important strategic aim, which is control of the eastern part of Ukraine, where those 2 little independent republics are, and there's a possibility that they will try and expand that territory in the east, which borders on Russia, and also on the south, going down to the Black Sea, where they took Crimea in 2014 already, and possibly then trying to proceed westwards to take what is now Ukraine's only port, Odessa. And that's going to have huge implications in all sorts of ways, not only for Ukraine, but for the world, because in fact Ukraine is the world's largest producer of wheat, and without a port they're not going to be able to export it. Whatever sort of solution or temporary, I believe it will be, ceasefire, takes place. But at the moment the fighting is going to go on, but the focus is going to change, so that Ukrainians, people who feel themselves to be Ukrainian and not Russian, and they very well in that area speak Russian at home all the time, who want to get out and not be in Russia, are now being urged to leave, and that is partly the dreadful thing that happened at Kramatorsk railway station, which is in eastern Ukraine, yesterday morning, was about. So more Ukrainians are now trying to flee. And the war will be very much now, I think, for the next stage, focused in the east and in the south, and that's right on the Russian border. The Russians will have much shorter supply lines. They're withdrawing at the moment round and coming in again from the east. And looking at the map, if you see the maps of where Russia is controlling now, it seems to me almost impossible that the Ukrainians are going to be able to get them out of where they are, but they have certainly stopped them from expanding. And what is going to happen next, I just don't know.
Yeah. So far, what do you make of the united EU response to the Russia invasion? Hungary, of course, being the first country to kind of give in to the pressure to say we will pay for gas and oil in rubles. Do you think there are some who will follow suit as well in that united EU response?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, it's a huge issue within the EU in general, and probably particularly really with Poland and Germany. But they have had a united response. I think it's a stronger response and a more uniform response. It does include Britain, where the Prime Minister went to Kiev today to meet with Zelensky. They have had a unified response, but they are also, because they are, without exception, members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, equally unable to commit to active war against Russia, as you know, in support of Ukraine. And what they are doing, and they're stepping it up enormously, is the supply, and the Americans too, of weaponry, advanced and sophisticated weaponry to Ukraine. And that is really as far as they can go, plus, of course, receiving the Ukrainian refugees, and there are now at least 4 million people who have left Ukraine over the last 7 weeks of the war, and humanitarian assistance of all kinds.
Yeah, and as far as you see it, the latest move of the banning of Russia from the Human Rights Council, and will that have any impact? Does it move Russia in any way?
I don't think so in the slightest. They've so far been suspended from the UN Human Rights Council. There were 93, this is a United Nations General Assembly resolution, not the Security Council, where all the big power is, but the United Nations General Assembly voted 93 to 24 for Russia's suspension from the UN Human Rights Council, and I think the Russians don't care much about human rights anyway, so I wouldn't think it matters at all. I just want to add that in additional, 57 states abstained from voting. In other words, they neither say yes nor no, and that includes our country, South Africa. And the South African stance, to me, is not surprising, but it's very unfortunate.
Now, of course, we've already touched on this in the wake of the attack on Kramatorsk, the train attack. Several Europe leaders are showing effort of some solidarity. In fact, many of them have arrived there. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was visiting Kiev, the capital of Russia. I mean, that kind of gesture in the long term, does it say anything? I'm saying that kind of gesture in the long term, does it mean anything?
That sort of support will go on, undoubtedly. And as I said, it's becoming increasingly significant in terms of the amount of military equipment and aid that is going into Ukraine from European states and also from the United States of America, of course.
Right, we appreciate your time, Dr. Sara Pienaar there. She's with the South African Institute for International Affairs. She's